Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome. I'm Rob Doherty, and this is the FSTVS Podcast Executive Edition, supported by Liberi Consulting and hosted by Julian Scott, the animation consultant for Film London. In this podcast series, we'll be chatting to the movers and the shakers in the animation industry, and discovering a little bit more about what they do, how they got there, their thoughts on the animation industry, and I hope get to meet the person behind that executive title. Julian's guest this week is the always inspiring, technology-pushing, groundbreaking, cliché-defying Dan Phil of Dark Slope Studios in Toronto. Dan and his team have been rewriting how we conceive, produce and engage with entertainment for 7 years now, but it's also Dan's career prior to Dark Slope that Julian digs into a little more, as well as exploring his penchant for a particular Mexican paedomorphic salamander. So grab a mug of something hot or alcoholic, sit back, relax, and let Dan Phil inspire you to push your own boundaries. À toi, Julien.
Dan, it's a great pleasure to be talking to you today. Now, you're the president of Dark Slope in Toronto, where you oversee the immersive games, television and Dark Slope Studios divisions, and that includes the company's new state-of-the-art multi-stage 35,000 square foot virtual production studio. Dark Slope itself has been heralded as a real screen trailblazer for its impact on the scripted and unscripted industries, and it's also been recognised in the Deloitte Technology Fast 500. Not too shabby. Before Dark Slope, you worked with Dave & Buster's, Jim Henson Company, Arden Entertainment, ITV, Viacom, BBC, CBC and Turner. You've been head of multi-platform for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and vice president of interactive for Decode Entertainment, which is now Wildbrain. I could fill most of this podcast with where you have been and what you've worked and who you've worked with, but I don't think many people know that you used to have a large aquarium of Mexican walking fish, or axolotl, which I hope I said right. And I understand they're pretty tricky to keep, aren't they? Why is that?
Oh, yeah. Well, the first thing is that they're about almost entirely blind, and they only like to eat fresh meat. And so you have to take, tweezers with a little bit of some nasty kidney and put it in front of them, and they snatch it. But if you leave it in the aquarium after and they don't eat it, they actually become allergic to that as well. So they're fairly high maintenance creatures, but they're lovely and beautiful.
Well, it sounds a little bit like my cooking. If you leave my cooking around for too long, it tends to get a bit toxic. But are any of the behaviours of the axolotls and the fact that you're an animal lover yourself prepare you for running large studios or dealing with clients? Obviously, no names.
Like leading the blind, you say?
I would never dream of saying that.
No. I do think that there's something really fascinating and almost magical about these creatures. And, that sense of curiosity, if you're able to kind of infuse that into clients to try and do something that they've never done before, that was probably the thing that really drew me to these special little creatures.
It's fascinating. I mean, you spent a lot of your professional life in the interactive and immersive sides of entertainment. Looking back when you were growing up, when you were a kid, were there any shows or movies or experiences that you look back on now as being formative in your career choice?
That's a great question. So obviously, my career is focused on interactive and on linear content. On the linear side, I grew up watching Blackadder and Saturday Night Live and Monty Python and SCTV. And, I started my career writing, and that was an experience. I actually started working on a Disney show called Monster by Mistake about this little boy who, every time he sneezed, he turned into this huge monster. And my first script that I wrote, I got a real schooling. I saw my script go through a story editor and then an executive story editor and then 2 producers and multiple broadcasters. And the end result of the script, like literally the only part that I think I wrote was the title at that point. And so that was an awakening about that. on the interactive side, nobody knew what the hell we were doing at that time. And so it gave us freedom, creative freedom to do things that, we really wanted to do. And I'd say from my formative years, my mother bought me a Commodore VIC-20 when I was 11 years old, which was just this beast of a machine. You had to use audio cassette tapes to load experiences. It would take you 5 minutes to boot up, something like Vic Invaders, a Space Invaders game where the letter pi would be attacking you. And you had to use a lot of your imagination to actually sell this experience, but it also showed where things could go. And I've always loved that we started with that computer.
And you mentioned that you had to use your imagination to sort of I suppose fully get involved with the game. And do you think now where Dark Slope prides itself on in your words making the impossible possible, do you think having that sense of inherent imagination in you has helped with all that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I find myself drawn towards people that want to create spectacles, get back to that childhood awe, do something that literally hasn't been done before. And, the types of projects from inception at Dark Slope that we've created have been things where, we started creating these super nerdy free roam VR theme park experiences, and you put on a VR headset, you'd put on a haptic vest so you could feel things that didn't exist. You'd wear motion tracking suits, and you and I could materialize as avatars. We'd have VoIP so we could talk to each other, and we were an entirely simulated warehouse world. And to this day, that ability to transform into something else, to be in another universe, that's sort of, I think, gold standard. That's where I want to go with things. And I'm lucky to be surrounded by people that also kind of share that kind of vision.
Sure. I mean, so on a day-to-day basis, when you turn up at the studio, I don't know, let's say 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. I have no idea whether you get there before or after that time. But how do you make the impossible possible when you turn up on Monday morning at 9 a.m.?
How do you make the impossible possible? Thankfully, I've got a team of people that are already doing that. We've got two ways in which we attempt to create magic. One is for audiences themselves, and it's thinking about how do I create something that they've never seen or done before. One side of our business works on spatialized XR experiences where they literally transform into another universe. The other side of the business is the LED volume space. And that's basically about providing tools to other producers so that they can shoot things that seem impossible. It's basically, I know everyone talks about House of Dragons and The Mandalorian and these projects that use that kind of volume. That's literally what every day we're going in and working with people. And it's amazing seeing these crews that do it for the first time, and they're almost giddy, like children, like they're doing something they've never done. And I love that. That's really part of the magic for me.
And your own career, rather like Dark Slope, has evolved massively over its lifetime. And from what you were just saying there, I wonder if that's, how things have evolved for you and the studio has been in response to the changing needs and habits of the market, or have you tried to be sort of the trendsetters, the trailblazers of the market and try and stay one step ahead?
It's a good question. It depends on the day. Sometimes it's just pure survival, like as I mentioned, when we started doing these theme park experiences, we were doing simulator rides for the Transformers, for Dave and Buster's, all these kind of activations that were brilliant. But of course, COVID hit and that whole industry just fell off a cliff. And so thankfully, using the same technology of the Unreal Engine, motion tracking and animation, you can pivot to doing motion capture animated series, LED volume production. So that literally is partly survival. I think the other side is just I get excited about human compulsion. I think of how exciting it might have been when they first figured out how to fly airplanes. And, for the first time in history, we were a creature that could get into the air. And now, obviously there's thousands of flights a day. So we need to go to space, and then we need to go underwater. And all of, even this technology we have right now, you're literally sitting on the other side of the world, and we can see and communicate perfectly in real time. Like that was magic, like 150 years ago.
Yeah, of course. I was just wondering as well, you're talking about, pivoting very quickly through the pandemic, which, a lot of studios had to do. I was wondering how much of Dark Slope's work is client-based, and how much of what you do is from the, that idea of human compulsion that you mentioned, the desire to go a step further. So what's the split between client work and developing your own ideas and your own IP?
Yeah, we aspire to be 50-50 and to use the service work to fund the development of original IP. Obviously, the market has been really tough for everyone the last little while, so it's probably leaning at the moment closer to 75% service, 25% original. But it's also a really good time right now to just sort of push away the noise and develop some really interesting things, because it will bounce back and there will be new opportunities. And many of the ideas are coming internally, but we're also really, really interested in partnerships and taking on, third-party ideas with the right fit. That chemistry is fantastic, and so we're constantly looking for the next great thing.
Sure. And when you look at an idea, whether it's generated internally or it's come from outside, what are the key ingredients that when you read that pitch deck, or you see a mood reel or a proof of concept or something like that, where you sit there and you go, I'm not saying you tick boxes, of course, but what are the things that just, you go, wow, I'm interested in this?
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of really strong, well-developed characters. If you decide to work with a company like Dark Slope, we're a very niche, specialized kind of group. On the game side, we're really focused on fantasy fulfillment. So we only do XR experiences, MR, AR, spatialized. You got to be in the quest, or that's where you're going. And so if you're thinking of developing a flat screen game, we're probably not your best partner for that. On the television side, we've got this big ass LED volume stage right now, and a team that's focused on spatialized content. So, we really want to push that new genres. We talk about this style of programming we've been trying to get into the market called hyper reality, and these are competition games that have got a digital component that's baked into the concept itself. The other thing I would say is that we're constantly looking at the evolution of new hardware as well, and new platforms, and, trying to think of where is the audience going to be, and how do we meet them in what they actually want to be doing. And so, we've always sort of been on that sort of forefront, I guess, of technology and delivering content experiences for these new platforms.
Do you think, you mentioned the very beginning of our chat that you started off as a writer, and going, being a writer, you can put anything you want on a page, and then dull people like producers come along and go, oh, we can't possibly achieve that for the money that we've got, or that's never going to work on this. And do you think part of that process has led you to be somebody who's constantly wanting to push boundaries, constantly thinking, where are we going to be in 1, 2, 5 years' time? And I suppose in a way, my question is, part of that sort of, it sounded like a slightly oppressive process you went through script writing, has driven you to want to push boundaries back all the time?
I think that at the end of the day, it is always about characters and story. And I don't mind if we're doing something that's quite small if it's done extraordinarily well. So we don't just push boundaries for the sake of pushing them. But look, I am very childlike. I do like the shiny new thing, and especially if it opens up new opportunities. I'm also like self-aware of even my own behavior when I'm on my phone while watching television, and my focus is distracted. I'm interested in creating forms of content where you're actually all in, that you're literally focused in that one thing and you're being present within it. The other thing I would say is, look, the audience has really changed. I was just at the Banff TV conference, and there was panel after panel that was talking about how regular television commissions are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and everyone is trying to fight over, the pieces of that pie. Get another pie. That pie is like stale now. So the younger audiences are somewhere else now, and they're going to be somewhere else after that. And so, you need to look over there, even if it doesn't seem like, your comfort zone right now. We're all pretty adaptable. And I think understanding that behavior, understanding where people want to be, but not just like I'm taking a linear show and I'm going to dump it in Fortnite, or it's just going to be a hit in Roblox. That's literally like shooting a play in the same way that, the play is performed, and trying to hope that succeeds on television. Like, you have to understand what the audience is connecting with in the new medium as well.
I completely agree with you. I was at the Children's Media Conference last week here in the UK, and there was one of the most important sessions was exactly that. And then I have to be honest, I felt in the room from some of my, I suppose you might want to call them the more traditional producers, there's a slight resistance, slight reluctance to want to move into these new areas. I don't know if you again, no names, but do you get that sense as well, that not everybody is completely engaged with the fact that the audiences it's not that they're gone, they're somewhere else. Do you sense there's a sense of reluctance to go along with that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's nice to surround yourself with some of the young people coming up, like there's a level of confidence that's coming out of Gen Z, and, even though they sometimes don't know what they don't know, what they do know is what their experiences are like and how they're engaging with things. And so just listening to them and understanding their behavior, it's quite enlightening. And they are really taking us forward with new forms of entertainment. And so we have to understand where that's going if we're going to succeed. And there's plenty of room for dinosaurs like us. Like they're like, again, as I say, storytelling is storytelling at the end of the day. It's just understanding the tools and understanding the audience. And if you're trying to force people into the good old days of the 90s or whatever, that's kind of like when my parents are trying to force me to watch something excruciating that they were into, and so we just have to adapt to survive.
No, I can't agree with you more. Back at Kids Screen, back at the beginning of the year, I went to a session on Roblox, which I have to be honest, at that point, I didn't fully understand myself. What I found interesting was one of the people who did a presentation about their approach to Roblox was that they had discovered that one of their key pieces of IP was, there was some sort of user-generated content on Roblox. And their instant reaction was to say, stop. That's our IP. You're in breach of copyright. Then they had a bit of an epiphany and they thought, hang on a minute. If people are creating stuff based on our IP, maybe that we should engage with them. And as I understand, they actually went and found this young person who had created a lot of the, I suppose, sort of fan-based stuff on Roblox and brought them in and said, okay, here's our IP. What do you think we should be doing with them? with it. And is that similar to something that you were just describing, engaging with these young people, finding out what they're doing, where they're doing it, and what excites them about it?
Oh, totally. And I mean, I think that the best thing you can do is to support those super fans. They obviously love your IP so much, and they probably know more about it than many of the people that are working on it. It's just so important to them. So, you want to service them. They also become your biggest advocates as well. They run all kinds of podcasts and channels and discussion forums. So you want to make sure that you understand this is your audience that you are literally going to try and reach. And if they want to be able to get up on a soapbox and have a sense of ownership of what you're doing, support it. The only thing you have to get the balance right, in my opinion, on is that in many cases, when we're making things, we have a professional team that produces things at a certain kind of caliber with a feel, and you want to make sure that remains the main version of your content, and that all of this surrounding content is clearly identified as being fan-based. But yeah, encourage the hell out of it. These are your advocates.
So there sounds like that you need to have a certain amount of sort of brand management, even though it's user generated. You have to not exert control, but manage that process, I would imagine, quite gently, so that everything is supporting itself and each other.
100%. But at the same time, these are the folks that really, really, truly love, and they will engage with your brand on every platform. So you want to have a bit of a relationship with them as well. And they're looking for that. They're looking for that very special thing. So, it's a two-way street. And I think that's the difference with content today, is that most audiences, sure, we have a place for listening to radio. We have a place for watching The Bear and different programs on TV. But a lot of the experience that we're seeing with the younger generations, and by that I mean 35 and under at this point, is they are active participants within it. And so you have to understand that that's the type of experience they're expecting.
This podcast is made possible thanks to the support of the awesome Liberi Consulting. Liberi offers specially tailored industry-related training courses. Check them out at libericonsulting.com. That's Liberi consulting.com. You can also find links to their fantastic courses on the Festivus website.
Going back a little tiny bit to some of the stuff that you've done in the past, you were named Australia's top digital innovator when you commissioned Australia's leading streaming service, ABC iView, which I think now it's accountable for something like 900 million streams. And with the event of YouTube and Roblox, and as we were saying earlier on, probably by the time this podcast drops, there'll be something new. So if you've developed something, you have some internal IP, what are the routes to market now, do you think, in your opinion? Because traditionally we'd go to a commissioner, we'd go to Netflix and we'd say, here's our idea. And they say, oh, it's great. How much? We tell them. They'd give us some money and we'd make it. But that's not how it works now, is it?
No, and I think everyone's confused as to how it actually does work right now. I think that we're sort of at an interesting moment. We're watching the technology companies take over basically what used to be, the studios. I mean, the impact of Netflix and Apple and Amazon on traditional, what we would consider entertainment, is unmissable. YouTube, obviously. So these are the players now. So what seems to be resonating for them? Well, it seems like at the moment, it's two things. It's one, if you literally go out, do your own thing, duct tape it together, throw something on YouTube or Roblox, and can demonstrate that there's an audience that's into this stuff, that's almost like doing a pilot and a test for them now, and they're backing that stuff. If you can find 1 million people that think you're hilarious or insightful or whatever, you've already baked in the algorithms for them. That's the first thing. The other way is, very conservative. It's, look, here's Hot Wheels, here's Paw Patrol, these brands that have been around forever, and let's bring those onto new platforms because we know there's going to be an audience for them. That's obviously a big part of the strategy right now. I feel like that's going to get tired at some point, not too far down the track. When you see the 11th version of like Beverly Hills Cop, you're going to be like, I need something new. So I wouldn't, think that will be the only way forward, but I wouldn't be afraid of looking at the new platforms and understanding they're trying to sell something, like if it's like, Apple Vision Pro, this incredible device that's come out, they need some content to make people want to spend a bomb on these things. And so figuring out like what can these new platforms actually do, and trying to find your way to get in front of them. Because if you have content that's going to help them sell it, they're going to want it.
No, sure. And the technology that's used in immersive and interactive content is constantly developing too. You mentioned earlier on about being fascinated by the hardware that drives all this. How do you think that new entrants, be they individuals or be they studios, companies, trying to establish themselves now, how do they stay on top of emerging technology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you have to decide what part of the ecosystem you want to be in. I think if you just literally are an excellent writer, world builder, story person, you should just continue to do that and understand it. It doesn't mean you need to start figuring out how to code in C++ so that you can get it on the next device. I think it's just understanding the medium and continuing to do what you are passionate about. One thing I've noticed is, with all these pivots that we've had to do at Dark Slope, there still seems to be three components that we use in everything that we've done. One of them is the use of the Unreal game engine. The second one is the use of motion tracking. And the third is high-end animation and CGI. To me, the fact that you can use those three things, and that can be a theme park experience, it can be VFX, it can be linear animation, it can be LED volume work. I would put my bet on that pipeline of that combo of things as being where one would want to place a bet. I don't think there's, in a world where the new devices are about GPS and tracking, I think understanding that space is really important for entertainment along with everything else. And then the game engine, it's really quite incredible how it's become so useful for linear content production now too. And it's not just Unreal, obviously there's Unity as well, but I think those tools are redefining content right now.
Interesting. And I think it's quite a lot of people who will, including myself, who have an idea about what Unreal Engine and Unity. But you've mentioned something else a few times, which I actually genuinely don't completely understand. And that's LED volume. Just for my own benefit, could you explain that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, historically, and when I say that, I mean only going back like under 10 years, the highest of the highest end CGI shows were using this combination of a bunch of computer screens. They're just panels, LED panels, just really high quality TVs that are turned into a huge cyclorama wall. So like a huge green screen that's curved. And in front of that, you've got your camera that's got a tracking node on it. And you have motion tracking cameras that are basically positioning and tracking as your camera moves around. And the last component of that is this, like I said, the Unreal Engine, which is basically allowing you to show your visual world on the screens. Why do you do this? Well, if we put yourself in front of this environment that's, say, like a snowy environment, and I move that motion track camera around, everything that we see is being properly lit. All of the reflections from your glasses are exactly how they should be because it's picking up the lighting off the wall and the ceiling in this environment. And that is quite an incredible experience. And, again, historically, this was so expensive to do that if your movie budget wasn't like $300 million, you wouldn't even touch this thing. But we're at a moment in time now where the hardware has come down in price. The processing capabilities has massively improved. And most of the colleges and universities, like we're working with them all right now, are bringing out the next generation of practitioners who know how to shoot and produce content in this way. And that's turning things around. It's basically getting to a point where it looks way better, it's way faster and way cheaper when done properly to produce content like this. And we're finding that it's in almost every bracket. Like we're working on things like Hallmark films that are, budget levels of maybe $1 to $2 million. Instead of driving around with your circus sideshow crew to 5 locations in regional areas where you're getting better tax credits, you can shoot it all in one day, all 5 setups basically. And you're not in the snow, you're not in the rain, you've got twilight hour all day long. In addition to that, the Unreal software has actually got this thing called Marketplace. And this is basically a place where I can buy hundreds of thousands of different assets very inexpensively. And I can use these assets to create that background. And these can be locations that would be cost prohibitive to do, like a subway. Can you imagine trying to shut down a subway for a shot? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can buy this asset for $50 and have royalty-free use of it in all perpetuity. So I think it's a game changer, and I think we're going to see a lot of things that were traditionally shot on green screen or on location are all going to be shot in the volume.
Wow, that's.
I hope, because we just bought one.
Well, I hope so too, for your sake.
Yeah.
You don't look too stressed at the moment, but
no,
we'll see.
It's been amazing. Even in this really down time, we only opened the volume 7 weeks ago, and we're just slammed with work,
really?
With little to no advertising. So we're optimistic. We'll see. Knock on wood, but it feels right.
It does sound, as somebody who produces live action as well as animation, we're going to be having a call after we've done this because I think that sounds really, really interesting. You mentioned then you were working with various universities, and so that the practitioners that come out of out of the universities are sort of well versed in this form of technology. Do you have a lot of connections with degree courses and training in and around Toronto?
We do, yes. And, the reality is that when you're on this cutting edge, we are also always learning, we are. And, we're, making the mistakes along the way and falling into the ditches and that. But every single person that's working in our company is doing things that they weren't doing a few years ago. So we're just as excited as the students are in some cases. But, one of the relationships we're most proud of is we've been working with the Canadian Film Centre for the last 3 years, where they have a series of Black, Indigenous, and people of color that are running their own businesses, and they're all in the entertainment space. And we basically provide them with our tools and our gear and our kit and a little bit of mentorship, but they drive their own kind of creative concepts to create pilot projects. And, over the last 3 years, we've supported 30 of these. And it's also introduced us to just these incredible voices that are coming out. And so, like I said, it's not like a one way, we are imparting information. We are on this voyage as well and learning. And that's been really exciting.
No, and I still love this business because of that that human connection, that collaboration, those partnerships, and as you say, things going backwards and forwards. And it sounds like your connections with training organizations and students is symbiotic, because you're giving something, but you're also getting people back into your organization, into what you do as a business, who are pretty much fully trained up, I suppose.
100%. Yeah. And look, it's early days, but we're, in discussions with the Directors Guild of Canada right now, CSC, and a number of the colleges and universities about curriculum-based work. And of course, we always do our internships and work with different studios to just kind of try and solve problems that we don't have the answers to ourselves. And so it's been great, really good.
No, brilliant. Now, you've had an incredible career at the forefront of new entertainment technology, and I want to just, as we finish up, just to ask you a few quick questions, reflecting on your career to date. What do you think the best piece of advice you have ever been given was? Be it creative, be it business, commercial, or technology. What do you think the best piece of advice you've ever been given was?
That's a good question. I think one piece of advice that's really stayed with me was just to remember that it's actually about relationships in this industry. And, if you work really hard and you do your best and you're an honest, decent person to work with, the people will want to continue to work with you, even if your show is a clusterfuck shit show. If you get on and you go through the trenches together, you will have many years of working together. And I feel very fortunate to, still have some of those relationships from 30 plus years ago. I would say don't get caught up in the noise and the hustle and bustle about doing one thing and thinking you're going to change the world with it on that one particular thing. Play the long game and be good to work with, I guess. No,
I completely agree. And this next question, you may have answered already, but I'll ask it anyway. What advice would you have given your younger self at the start of your career, when you were first thinking about this is the entertainment is where I want to go? What advice now, as a slightly older Dan, would have given the younger Dan?
I'd say be easy on yourself, relax, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. That's literally how you learn. And I wish that I had that older version of me to say that when I was younger. But yeah, that would be the advice.
And would you encourage a new entrant to come into the industry right now?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a curious individual that has ambitions of creativity, or even if you are, motivated by financial opportunities, I think that there's now is as good a time as any. It's hard, but it will change, and there's going to be new opportunities around the corner.
Great. And this is probably the most important question I could ask you. Would you now encourage anyone to keep Mexican walking feet?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think that they are hard work. They are extinct in the wild, and there are reasons for that. So they need love and care, but they are incredible and, transformative. And actually, one thing I'll say about that, if you do a bit of research on them, you might find that, if you literally, and I don't know why anyone would do this, but if you literally provide them with iodine, they actually transform into another species of a salamander. And I've never heard about that with creatures before. I also, with the collection of, axolotls that we had, we found that they would eat each other's limbs every so often. They were friends, but they would do that. And their limbs just completely regenerate over a period of weeks. And that to me is just sensational, to see a fish that can walk, that eats its friend's leg, and that leg grows back and they hang out together. It's amazing. So yes, if you're in for the hard work, axolotls all the way.
Dan, I don't know what that tells me about the corporate culture of Dark Slope. I think we should leave it there. But it's been a real pleasure chatting to you today. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed speaking with you.
Well, there you go. A lovely chat with a lovely guy. And now I know more about axolotls than I ever thought possible. A huge thanks to Dan for his time and insight, and of course to Julian for his wonderful hosting skills. Find out more about Film London and how Julian works to help globally promote our industry in the UK capital by visiting their website filmlondon.org.uk. Many thanks also to Janet Balmforth and the team at Liberi Consulting for their organising and management skills. Find out more at libericonsulting.com. And finally, my gratitude to Odilia Sickinghe for her support and editing skills. If you're looking for a talented development executive and a wonderful human, seek her out. That's all for this week. I've been told I should remind you to subscribe, like, and share this podcast with friends and colleagues alike. And why not check out previous episodes via our website, FSTVS.net. Grazie, arigato, tack, and see you next time.